Good evening. Merry Christmas, my dark minions. I'm Lady of Darkness. If you're listening to this, I trust that you've been bad this year, and you weren't dragged away in chains by Krampus in the depths of the night. That, or you're a very skilled con artist. Since it's Christmas, I thought I'd treat you to a much longer tale for this magical holiday. This tale serves as a warning, than just a tale of a smiling child on Christmas. So come a little closer, and we will begin. Delia Archer had just turned 6 years old. She and her mother had spent their entire day celebrating just the day before. She and her mother had always been extremely close. But unfortunately, not even her mother's bubbly personality could save them from tragedy that would strike, changing their lives forever. 1 year ago, Delia's life changed drastically when her mother and father had gotten a divorce. Nothing had ever been the same. At least that's what Delia was convinced when she had found herself screaming after her father that day, when he had been packing his bags and listening to the horrific sounds of them arguing, exchanging ugly, profane words to one another. Sandra had tried hard to keep what was left of her little family together when she had been struggling as a single mother, attempting to juggle 2 day jobs with her ex-husband's inability to provide her with monthly child support checks. "But Mom, I thought you said that you'd get back with Dad," Sandra sighed. "Delia, you know your father and I aren't getting back together. Now why don't you just be a good girl and lie down and get some rest? You have so many Christmas presents to open in the morning." "But Mom, it's Christmas. Can't you just let me stay up a little longer?" Delia whined. "You know that's not how things are done, young lady. It's already 8:30. It's past your bedtime. If you don't sleep, Santa won't come here tonight," Sandra said as she pulled the covers over Delia's chin, then kissed her goodnight. "Do you think your new boyfriend will like me, Mom? I don't want what happened to the last time when you had a boyfriend to happen again." Sandra sighed in agitation. She had remembered just how embarrassing and annoying Delia's obnoxious ways had been when she had been on a date with her previous boyfriend after the relationship had failed miserably. Delia kept demanding and pleading for her mother to get back with her father, and that life just wasn't the same without him. Delia had lied to him ruthlessly, telling him that her mother had plans to get back with her father. The relationship ended abruptly after a heated argument between the two. Sandra was torn. "Mom, I want you and Dad back together. None of your boyfriends ever like me. They're not my real daddy. I want Daddy," Delia cried. "I want you to be a good girl and go to sleep. Do you understand me? Mommy has to go spend this special night with a very special, nice, special man. I promise things will be different. It will be fine, I promise." Delia frowned and crossed her arms, just over the blankets. "Are you sure?" Delia asked. Sandra smiled. "I'm sure, honey. Now get some sleep. You might have that Barbie doll to add on to your doll collection that you've been wanting this Christmas." Delia smiled. "Okay. And Mom?" "Yes, honey?" "Do you think Peter will like the Christmas dinner you made for him? You worked so hard cooking it. I just want to make sure he will enjoy it," Delia asked, with her toothy smile still showing new and old whites alike. "I'm sure he will love it, honey." Delia had grown over these past few months to just accept this new arrangement, despite how much she dreaded it. Her father was the one she really wanted back at home. "Now get some sleep. You don't want to be tired tomorrow. And besides, You'll need all your energy to open presents in the morning, Sandra cheered. Sandra leaned over to kiss her daughter on the forehead and finished tucking her in for the night. Amazingly, Delia had grown out of her nightlight phase that many children would have, or even should have, found comfort in having. Sandra pranced back into the Christmas-themed dining room, where a candlelit dinner had been. You look gorgeous, darling. I've always loved the red dress on you. I did always say you should wear red more often, Peter said, just as he had been lighting another red candle, as he finished setting the table. Sandra had set the table earlier and poured 2 glasses of red wine. It wasn't often when she'd drink, but being a single mother and always trying to set a better example for her daughter, wine was only an occasional indulgence to her. I hope you can forgive me about that. Delia, she's still adjusting. She's 6 years old. The divorce was traumatic for her. It was traumatic for you, too. It's a difficult time for her. Just give her some time, Peter encouraged. You're right, but she's going to have to learn that things in life won't always go her way. That's simply not how the universe works, scolded Sandra. I guess perhaps you're right, Peter giggled lightly. Delia's had an obsession with her father and I getting back together for the longest time. That's not going to happen, and she needs to learn and just accept that. I'm sorry, Peter, but since the divorce and us finding out about the cheating scandal, things haven't really been the easiest for her. It also doesn't help that Delia has always been a daddy's girl, Sandra sadly explained. I'm really sorry about that, Sandra, but you seem to be doing much better these days. I really do mean it. Most women would have crumbled in your shoes. Sometimes I feel like I failed her in so many ways, like I wasn't a good enough mother, sighed Sandra sadly. Peter walked over to Sandra, kissing her on the lips, embracing her face in his strong hands. Sandra, you're being ridiculous right now. You know that's not true. You're far from a bad mother or failing in any kind of way. You certainly didn't fail with this Christmas dinner. It looks and smells delicious. Sandra smiled. I'm starving, babe. I've saved my appetite all day just for this special dinner. Let's eat, Peter said, releasing Sandra from his warm embrace. The embrace that always seemed to ease her when she was at her worst. I haven't had red wine since after graduation, high school, Peter excitedly said as he took a sip from out of his wine glass. Sandra only smiled, then reached for her fork and steak knife. I'll have my chance. Right now I want to go for a bite for the steak before the food gets cold. I'm starving, Sandra said, sending a savory stream of steak sauce over her medium rare cooked steak. I haven't eaten this good since at the steakhouse, and that's been over 5 years ago, Peter said, steak sauce spilling out from the sides of his mouth. Peter, haven't your mother ever taught you not to speak with your mouth full? Sandra giggled as she cut off a piece of her steak. I'm sorry, honey, but you really did outdo yourself with this dinner. You deserve an Oscar award as world's best chef. You're being so unfair right now, Peter. This wasn't just for me. This was for us, Sandra said, with a mouthful of steak. I see what you mean. It's been months since I've actually cooked a hot meal to enjoy. This is delicious, Sandra said, gulping down the contents of chewed-up food. Peter instantly inhaled another sip of his red wine, then went for a spoonful of mashed potatoes. I need to ask you a serious question, Peter confessed, pushing his plate of half-eaten food to the side. Peter had suddenly not felt hungry anymore, and that question that had been ebbing away on his mind, and the thought had found itself way back. What is it? Sandra asked, as she wiped her mouth with a napkin. Things between us has been getting very serious, and I really do like you. I'm ready to take this relationship to the next level, Peter said. Just what are you trying to ask me? Sandra asked, the excitement rising up within her voice. I'm saying I love you, Sandra. I want you to be my wife. Will you marry me? Sandra could feel her throat drying up, and she desperately needed a drink to wash down the contents. But she was filled with so much bliss. Thirst at the moment wasn't at all concern for her. Peter reached for something in his pants pocket as he stood excitedly to his feet. Seconds later, Peter pulled out a small velvet red ring box, and Sandra could barely contain herself. Will you marry me? Will you be my wife? Yes, I will be your wife. Sandra stood to her feet, falling weak into his arms. Moments after the proposal, a bright diamond ring swallowed up her ring finger, glistening that brightly lit diamond glow throughout the candlelit room. I can't wait to reveal this news to Delia tomorrow. She's going to be so happy. Peter smiled, and in this moment he had felt like the happiest man alive. Come on, honey. It's time for a celebration. Let's toast to that, Sandra boasted. Sandra admired the diamond ring that greeted her on her ring finger, and the two happily walked back over to their table, retrieving to their seats, both reaching for the wine glasses. To this amazing announcement and celebration of my husband-to-be, Sandra said excitedly as the two wine glasses met. Sandra gulped down several swallows of wine after she had given in to her overbearing thirst that she had been feeling but holding back before. Instantaneously, she gagged and retched, spitting red wine violently into the air. The wine cup dropping to the floor from her hand, glass shattering and scattering debris and leaking its contents onto the tile floor. Sandra clawed and clutched at her throat, making choking noises as if she were being strangled. Red wine and blood trickled down her chin. Peter screamed in shock and fear as he tried to grab Sandra before she collapsed into the floor, as her head striking a towel. Her tiny frame banged against the floor in spasms. She coughed violently as both blood and wine spilled ferociously from her mouth into the air as Peter ran frantically to her side as large particles of human tissue seemed to have been coming up in a mixture of red wine and blood. Sandra! Jesus Christ, Sandra! What is wrong? Peter screamed and cried as Sandra shook violently in his arms, and more frothy blood mixed with tissue sprayed from her mouth and onto his arms and clothes. Delia! I need you in here right now! Mommy, Delia said, stepping into the dining room wearing her pink pajamas. Mommy, what is it? I heard screaming. Delia, come stand by your mother while I call 911. Something's wrong with your mother, and I need you to come over here and stand next to her and be a strong girl, Peter yelled out madly. Your mother needs an ambulance. What is it? What's wrong with Mommy? Delia asked, her eyes filling up with tears, yet full of terror as she stepped further into the candlelit, darkened dining room. Delia, get over here now. Your mother needs help. Delia froze when she had seen the very critical condition that her mother had been in, as her body continued to convulse and the broken glass and spilled wine lay scattered all over the floor. Mommy! Mommy! Did Mommy drink this cup of wine? Delia, what are you talking about? I need to call 911 now. Mommy wasn't supposed to drink this cup of wine. It was supposed to be your cup of wine to drink. You ruined everything, Delia shouted, filled with anger. What? What do you mean, the wrong cup? What are you talking about? That cup of wine was never meant for Mommy. It was meant for you. Peter had now been at his wits' end with his patience and deeply troubled when his fiance's spasms tapered off into complete stillness. He had been too afraid to come to the full conclusion about this and knew what it could only mean. Peter's eyes darted over to the spilled wine on the floor, then back at Delia, who by now had been red in the face, seething. The wine! What did you do to the wine, Delia? Peter desperately asked as he ran fiercely over to the phone. I poured liquid plumber in a cup of wine. But why would you do such a horrible thing like that? Why? For the love of God, why would you do such a hateful thing? Peter shouted angrily. That cup of wine was supposed to be yours. I wanted my real daddy back, not you. Mommy replaced daddy with you and I hated you for it. You were supposed to drink that wine, not Mommy. Mommy knew, but she still wanted to be with you. I wanted to make you pay for ruining our lives. You're the reason my daddy didn't come back to Mommy. Like a contagious, deadly sickness, a numb coldness started to grow, then spread all throughout his body. And he had suddenly felt cold and numb. Oh God, what have you done? Peter cried, clutching the phone as he frantically dialed for 911 as Sandra's limp body lay before him and her cold hand entwined with his as he held her, willing her back to life. The only thing in return that seemed to have greeted him was a diamond ring on her ring finger that shined brightly back at him. I need an ambulance. I need an ambulance now. It's my fiance. She's been poisoned and she's not breathing. There's been a homicide. The address is 2224 Pine Bay Road. It's her 6-year-old daughter. She poisoned her mother. A few minutes after Peter had gotten off of the phone with 911, he had immediately ran over to Delia. He shook her hard and shouted at her ferociously, forcing her to look at him. What did you do? Peter asked as he still shook her hard. Your own mother. You killed your own mother. You're in big trouble, kid. How the hell could you have done something like this? What kind of monster are you? What kind of daughter are you? Why? Peter yelled, grabbing both of Delia's arms. Delia refused to look at him. Her eyes had been closed shut, but the expression of infuriation could still be read on the girl's Scarlett's face. I want Daddy. I want my daddy. Mommy and Daddy were supposed to get back together. This would have never happened if you would have never came into our lives, if you would have never came here. It's your fault Mommy is dead. You were supposed to be the one to die, not Mommy. I want my Mommy back. I want my Mommy and Daddy back together. I want you to die, Delia screamed, breaking free her hand from Peter's enraged grip. Don't you see? None of this would have never happened if you would have just stayed away, if you would have just left us alone. Why can't anybody have just ever listened? Why can't nobody ever just leave us alone? Delia said, angrily crossing her arms. Peter could not speak. His heart pounded rapidly against his chest as the coldness and numbness continued to spread throughout his entire body. He could only look in absolute fury, heartbreak, all in one, as he had been looking at this little 6-year-old girl standing before him. Ice had been running through her veins. There had been no innocence there whatsoever, despite the illusion of a mirage of children being innocent, the innocence many people want to believe only exists in innocent children. This was something that Peter never quite fully believed. He had known evil had had the ability to spread its vileness, plant itself in some of the most innocent minds, corrupting them, then hide behind the face of innocence. I just wanted my family back, so just leave me alone, Delia screeched as she stomped towards her bedroom door until the sounds of police and ambulance sirens cut the eerie, pervading quietness that seemed to have haunted the menacing moment. Oh dear. Children these days can be so hateful, don't you think? Then again, those that are so hateful, I'm sure Krampus will pay them a visit tonight. If you've enjoyed this dark tale, do give this video a thumbs up and leave me a comment. Remember to hit that subscribe button along with that bell icon to make sure you get new updates. That is all for this Christmas holiday, my Dark Minions. I hope Saint Nick brings you plenty of goodies and Krampus leaves you alone. Till next time, sweet dreams.